We are live. We are live.
Well,
On today's episode, what are we discussing?
well, there's a couple of topics that I like, actually.
We have our Fast 5 facts, and we have registered education savings plans, a little John Tavares CRA tax dispute going on, the Me-cession, a new term I haven't heard
Which
about.
is not recession, it's a me-cession.
It's a Me-cession, yeah, I didn't mispronounce that, yeah. And what is wealth?
Very important topic, what is wealth?
There we go. That's going to be a good one.
All right.
Jerry, you have the quote this week?
I do have a quote. I have one that starts with time is the only currency you spend without knowing your balance, was the first one that we're talking about.
Use it wisely.
Use it wisely.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm going to lead to Charlie Munger, who basically said, spend each day trying to be a little wiser than you were when you woke up, which is fine. But that leads to my favorite one that says, every person you meet knows something you don't. Listen and absorb knowledge. Every person.
Is that a Jerry quote?
I'm not going to tell you who it came from.
Unknown.
But every person knows something you don't. And I think that's really valuable for people to, I don't know, if you want to be respectful of other people, listen to other people, pick something up, and go from there. So
try to take the best from everybody. And
exactly.
Everybody has something to
say.
A lesson and,
I agree.
Wisdom. Yeah.
I agree.
Awesome. Okay, well, let's get into it here.
Fast 5.
Our Fast 5. So the first one was an ad from 1996 that was pretty dead on. I stumbled across this on the World Wide Web
Were you
somehow.
born in 96?
I was born quite a few years before 1996, but pretty dead on about inflation. And the ad said, I'm going to read this here. They say in 30 years, so keep in mind this was 1996, they say in 30 years a burger and fries could cost $16, a vacation $12,500, and a basic car $65,000.
It sounds like they're light on all three items.
It's pretty close.
Pretty
though.
accurate.
It's pretty accurate.
It is accurate.
And it's strange to think about 30 years from now and what would you say a burger and fries cost 30 years from now?
More importantly, what was the burger and fries in 96? Those things may have been $4 or something. So if somebody would have told you $16 for a burger and fries, you would just laughed at them.
Well, what was Harvey's Hamburgers back in 96?
Yeah, well, you could get them for 99 cents. If you wanted cheese, it was $1.05.
There you go.
So there's a big difference. So that's a very good point. What's going to happen 30 years from now? Well,
to be determined.
If we push these numbers out, it gets a little scary. But then, of course, what is your income going to be? How much you earning?
Yes.
It all falls in line. So if a hamburger is $50 and the base pay is $45 an hour, it's fine. It's just that it's hard to comprehend right now based on looking at this, what's going to happen again.
And I'm sure that was the point of the ad, is that it was seemingly a pipe thing in the future, a pipe dream in the future that, what could happen?
And the guy hit it dead on, literally dead on. So
we had a bit of a viral post on inflation recently on our Instagram page. Go check that out. We might even show it right here. But I think I like the example that we used of the weight gain example. To a lot of clients ask us, well, how come inflation's coming down, but the prices aren't going down? I still see prices at the grocery store are going up. And so I think this example was good. So let's say in 2020, you weighed 200 pounds, and in that year, you gained 4 pounds. Okay. And then the next year, 2021, you gained 7 pounds. 2022, you gained 11 pounds. In 2023, you only gained 6 pounds.
So you're at 229, I think.
And then in 2020, let's say in 2024, you've put on 3 pounds.
I'm doing great.
So your weight gain is
way less than the average what it was.
But your weight is still up over those 5 years.
So what you're saying to me, it didn't get below the 200 starting point. I set a new starting number is what you're saying.
And if you use that same example for the price of chicken or fruits and vegetables or whatever at the grocery store, it's the same idea. You're not going to see that go below 200. Most likely, it continues to rise.
That's exactly right.
But at a slower rate.
Exactly right. So if a lemon was $1 and it went to $1.25, and you go, I can't believe it, $1.25. And then it goes $1.28, $1.32. You're still starting with that $1.25 number.
But
now.
Inflation,
the damage is done.
The inflation rate is coming down.
Yes, the percent. You're right. Okay, that's good.
And we have some news maybe finally coming out of the U.S. Fed. The Bank of Canada's cut rates 3 times now, just recently, one more. So the U.S. Fed meets in middle September here, and
Pretty well guaranteed it's going to come down.
It looks like it's going to come down. So we have that first U.S. Fed rate cut, and we like to use the S&P 500 as a good benchmark for equities, and that's one of the bigger indices in the world. So if we look at this chart here, what it's showing is that 12 out of 14 times after the first Fed rate cut in the U.S., what do the S&P 500 returns look like? They're positive 12 out of 14 times 12 months later. So if we get that cut on September 18th.
So you're going from September of 24 to September of 25. There's a high probability we'll be in a positive number.
And again, past performance doesn't predict future performance, but it's good to look at this and that it's not all doom and gloom necessarily.
Well, I'd rather be on the 12 over 14 side than the 2 out of 14. So
yes, exactly. Yeah.
All right, that's good.
And our last Fast Five fact is a bit more of an in-depth one, but I thought it was crucial to put it in there. The yield curve has uninverted.
I remember this topic before, inverted yield curve.
We have talked about it a few times.
Okay, where the short-term interest rates were higher than the long-term, and we finally go back to some sense of normality. I think what you're saying is finally the short-term is less than the long-term, which is historically where it's supposed to be. Is that?
Yes, historically it does. That's the normal world that we're in.
They pay you more to keep your money longer, which is
the yields are higher. Yes, and I think the interesting thing about the uninversion of that. So now that it's returning to that normalcy, when that happens, it's usually a recession indicator. So your CNBCs, your top 10s, they're going to tell you look out because there's a recession. So we wanted to take a bit of a peek at this to see, okay, what does it actually look like? And our first chart shows a bunch of numbers, what it looked like 12 months before and what it looked like 12 months after the uninversion. And I think when we're looking at that chart, it doesn't really tell us much looking at that. Sometimes it's higher, sometimes it's lower. So we kept drilling down a little bit further to look at the next chart here, which shows that in a graph format. And so what you're looking at, that dotted line in the middle, is the uninversion. And so that's kind of right where we're at right now. So we see to the left of that line, the previous returns, how they looked, and then after that. So we see a bit of a dispersion between the dark blue line and the lighter blue line there, going forward out from 0 to 15 months beyond the uninversion date. So this is kind of a forward looking at what we might see.
And we still don't know exactly what's going to happen.
Of course.
Let's make sure we clarify that.
But I think
we're not predicting that. But
no, and it comes down to, what does this tell us? Well, it doesn't really tell us anything either, because it all comes down to whether we can avoid a recession, and that's the light blue line. So avoiding a recession, the 2 and 10 uninverting isn't as big of a deal. We see positive returns a year later out. However, if we do get that recession, that's when the returns get negative. So something to keep in mind, that again, it's not all doom and gloom. When we look at the data behind there, if we can avoid that recession, things look better a year from now.
Who made up this word uninversion?
Nobody made it up. It's just a word.
So it's not you didn't make this
well,
up.
I think the reason is from history, when the 2-year Treasury yield and the 10-year Treasury yield uninversion happens, it has been a recession indicator. So we usually do get a recession. Now, do we get a recession 48 months from now? You know, you're going to get a recession eventually, but does it happen
what you're saying is
4 years from now, a year from now, 6 months from now? So that's the unknown.
I'm surprised you haven't set me up to refer to my reversion to the mean. I prefer the reversion to the mean, but
we're moving on from the reversion to the mean. And we did have one more here, the daily average time spent with friends, which I do remember, being a kid and playing road hockey, doing those types of things outside, hanging out with friends. And this chart was alarming when I saw it. So the daily average time spent with friends in minutes, The minutes are on the left side of that chart, and the age groups 15 to 24, 25 to 34, 35 to 64. The age groups are the lines there. So going back to 2003, the real sharp decline one here is ages 15 to 24, the daily average time spent with friends. This was a U.S. study, and you can just see how far gone from 160 minutes on the top left you see there down to almost 40 minutes a day. And so just wanted to get your thoughts on that.
Well, basically not to give it away via my age, but what was really important when I saw this was, I remember a time when your friends, and whatever you were doing and the session was over, I would go to you, hey, CJ, I'll see you next Tuesday at the hockey game, or Friday at the theater.
Yeah.
We would set a time that we would then see each other next.
They didn't just call it the movies back then? They still called it the theater? Okay, all right.
We set up an actual time of when we would cross paths. A road hockey game, it doesn't matter. I'll see you on Tuesday.
Yeah.
Whereas now, it's like, bye, gone. You get your phone out. You may throw an occasional text, but it's just not the same. And I think it's really important, especially, I really looked at the last year, the 35 to 64. As you get older, it's almost like you have friends, but you don't stay in touch with them. You don't set up a time to cross paths,
and
get together.
People's lives get busy, and
yes.
You're lucky enough to hang out with your best friend every day.
Who's that?
Look
yeah, okay. Anyway, it is something definitely to
and
for
I think
people to absorb.
The other side of that would be if you put, which we didn't, but if you put the rise of 15 to 24-year-olds having smartphones from 2003, it probably starts on the low end and goes up in terms of minutes that they spend on the smartphone. So the pros and cons of technology,
isn't it
as we always talk about.
Not to be directly rated, isn't it like 7 hours a day average people are on their phone, or something I read once, some crazy number.
Especially that age group might be.
Maybe more.
Maybe
more.
Yeah.
Scary.
Definitely.
All right.
Yeah, so to get into our first topic after the Fast Five here, registered education savings plans. Having Charlotte and Briar, 7 and 5, I've been able to take advantage of contributions to that over the last few years. I think there's major benefits to it.
Still a good thing, obviously,
yes,
right?
Yeah. So what's the deal? Why don't we tell everyone what's the deal with
deal, we're not trying to sell it. We're trying to at least give you the facts that you get some free money. But when people hear the word free money, they seem to open their eyes. The bottom line is the government says if you give me $2,500 towards your child, we'll give you $500 or 20%.
Yeah.
So that alone should attract a large number of parents to at least ask questions.
So as soon as your child's born, you get the social insurance number, and you can get started right away.
Right, you can put $50. You don't have to put $2,500.
Yes.
But at $2,500 on a calendar year, you're maxed out to the $500. So
that's the maximum grant that you can receive
in a year.
So every dollar up to that $2,500 mark
gets 20%.
Gets 20%.
And I think it's paid, not I think, I know it's paid to you the following month, end of the next month.
Yep.
So if you put February the 15th, on March the 31st, you will get deposited in that account 20% of what you put in.
And it comes down to around $200 a month. If you can get $200 a month aside, you're gonna get pretty darn close to maxing that out by the end of the year.
Christmas presents, birthday presents, buy this, buy that. Get some money into your child's account, because you're gonna blink, and Charlotte and Briar are gonna be 17 and say, "Dad, I just got the bill for $12,000 for the first term."
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So.
And the other benefit is so the tax side of that. Let's talk about that a little bit. So it is tax sheltered, so that you don't get an annual tax slip for the contributions or any investments
after
that you
tax
have
dollars.
in there.
You're right.
And which is good. And as you move along here, so you have your money that you put in, your contribution, you have the grant, and then hopefully the growth over that longer term time period.
So I think in my 25 years plus of doing RESPs, I can remember two, it may only be one, but 2 times where a child, because it goes on the beneficiary's tax return.
Yes.
The problem is, not the problem, the good news is when the child is actually going to school, they have an RSP, they have a tuition slip, they have expenses. So
which can
this-
offset, because
it does
the
offset.
grant and the growth that you take out of the RESP,
Is taxable.
that's where the tax comes in
on the beneficiary,
for your child.
the beneficiary.
And the child has the the tuition credits, textbook credits, those types of things. Usually, unless they're in a really great co-op or a really great summer job,
that happened to me
their
twice.
income's going to be lower.
They don't pay tax. So this is screaming to people, absolutely take advantage of it if you can.
And we like to set up a family RESP plan usually. So even if you just had your first child and you're not sure if you're going to have more, a family RESP plan allows you some flexibility to add future children to your plan. And the major benefit of that is that they can share the grant and the growth and the contributions. They don't have to, it doesn't have to be your first child has this amount, your second child has this amount.
It's
There's
merged
some
together.
opportunity to,
Except for the $7,200 of grant, each child cannot exceed $7,200 of grant. But the real benefit here is you have 3 kids, as an example, and you've had them 1.5, 2 years apart. Well, there could be a time in the future where all 3 kids are going to school at the same time. And it's just handy to be able to merge this money together and be able to assist along the way, because the youngest one has more time in school, the oldest one's going to come out, that kind of stuff. So
yeah. And what can you use it for? So everyone says,
Anything.
well, what if Charlotte gets a scholarship to University of Notre Dame and she's on the golf team there, or who knows?
if she's enrolled,
She has a scholarship there, so they're helping pay for her tuition. Do I really need to have an RESP?
are they paying the entire tuition?
The answer is yes. You still can use it because
You can buy a car with it. You're right.
Yes,
I know what you're getting to.
Yes,
but
exactly. You can pay rent with it. You can pay computer, textbooks, meal plans. So there's lots of flexibility as long as you're enrolled to be able to use those funds that
I
are
thought
in
you
the
said
RESP.
going out to the restaurant and bar with your girlfriends, but
Well, I have no idea. Well, one step at a time on that.
yeah, I know,
boss.
one day at a time.
And so
It's flexible. You just
it's
as long as
flexible.
you're enrolled,
Yeah.
you can use the money for anything.
And if they don't attend a post-secondary school, you do have, maybe they decide they don't want to jump right into university or college or an apprenticeship, something like that, right out of school. There is some flexibility to wait, give them some time, and you can keep that account open until your child turns 31. Which who knows, they might come back and want to attend school later. So you have that flexibility.
Highly unlikely from 17 to 31.
You,
But yes.
you have that flexibility.
Yes.
And at a worst case scenario, the investment growth portion of what you put in, you always get your contributions out.
Back anyway.
But the investment growth portion can be added to yours
Personal
or
RSPs.
the owner's, yours or your wife's,
Yeah.
if that's how
The
it's set up.
subscribers,
Yep.
RSPs.
RSPs, the retirement savings plan. The grant has to go back to the government.
Which you never had it in the first place. Right?
Yes, yeah.
It wasn't yours in the first place, I guess. So
So I think that's an objection that we get a lot of times from clients that, well, what if they don't go to school? I think there's enough flexibility there that the benefits, the pros outweigh the cons.
I agree.
Yeah. And yeah, so I mean, the bottom line, I dare say too many people are missing out on the value of the RESP, and they're really the best way to save for post-secondary education.
And you do it when you have a newborn right out of the gate, because it's a small amount of money.
Yeah.
And as the years go by, you'll be very, very happy that you did regular contributions. You just will be.
Yes.
We've seen enough of it now
Yeah.
over the years that we know for sure you'll be a happy person if you can just start it off.
Well, and as you say, your kids are going to come to you most likely anyways for
First
that
stop.
money. So
First
stop is the parent anyways. So
Exactly.
it helps by doing some planning. It helps get you ahead of the game there too.
I agree.
John Tavares, Toronto Maple Leafs, former Toronto Maple Leafs captain. He's got a bit of a
Still the
CRA.
captain
He's got a
until-
bit of a CRA tax dispute going on there. So let's park the captain thing for a second here. So I'm gonna read this because it's a bit of a complex situation here. So Tavares is contesting a CRA reassessment, which claims his 2018 income was nearly $18 million higher than reported, leading to an additional tax liability of nearly $7 million, now over $8 million, including some penalties and interest. And so that it has to mainly do with the signing bonus of over $15 million that he received July 1st, if you remember the fateful day when the Leafs signed him on the free agent day there, into his New York bank account while he was a U.S. resident. So he played for the Islanders
So just
before.
sorry to interrupt you. Just to go back one fact. This is a kid who was drafted in 2009 as the number 1 pick overall. And he decided to go to New York Islanders, a U.S.-based team, and immediately became a U.S. resident. So for 9 years, between 2009 and 2018, he was deemed to be a U.S. resident.
Which I don't think, I'm not sure that tax and
the reason I say that is because
that,
I believe, and everybody reads it a little differently, in 2018, fast forward 9 years later, his entry-level contract's over. His contract is done. He's a free agent.
Yeah.
He wanted to come home. I think home is Mississauga. Is it Mississauga?
I think so, yeah. Somewhere in the GTA.
So he wanted to come home, which was a great windfall for Toronto. I'm a Leaf fan. It was a great windfall for me.
Yeah.
But part of the condition was sign a contract, and the contract was a base salary and a signing bonus to get me to come to Toronto. But I'm still living in the United States, and they have a tax treaty there of 15%. He's not disputing paying 15%. Welcome to Canada. How much is the tax rate, CJ, when you're at...
Well, so I think the argument here is that he's arguing that it should be the 15%.
Absolutely.
As it was a carrot dangled by the Leafs for him to sign with them, is that signing bonus that he would have
Which
received.
he expected to pay 15%.
And that's under the Canada-U.S. tax treaty provision for athletes and artists, which is certainly we're not experts in that, interesting out of curiosity more so. And it sounds like the CRA is arguing that signing bonus was tied to services that would be rendered in Canada, so him playing for the Leafs. And one of the agents was doing an interview, not Tavares' agent, but one of the agents was doing an interview. I thought he made a good point about just how important it is to have professional
wording
expertise writing up these contracts, because the wording can make a massive difference. And if there's one word out of line there and the CRA picks up on that, it can cost you $8 million.
I'm not a lawyer, but I guess I think that's what they're disputing right now.
And the case is still ongoing, and I think there's probably a lot of people interested in this, and athletes and artists.
It has a huge domino effect on a lot of people here. This isn't about John Tavares. John Tavares brought it up.
Yes.
There's all kinds of people. And at another time, another date, we can talk about hockey and the big difference of playing in Canada versus playing in the States when it comes to tax. It's a massive difference.
Yes, yeah.
And we all know as Canadians, we pay a lot of tax, and we all complain about it all the time. And these guys are making millions of dollars. But the bottom line here is, if we were to dig in here, the guy playing in Florida is making $8 million. The guy playing for Toronto has to make 11 to net the same amount of money.
Yes.
So this is a big thing for a lot of people are keeping their eye on this. I don't think that I agree with you. I don't think there's a ruling.
No, I think it's still ongoing, but I think it will set it'll set a precedent one way or the other.
For sure it will.
On
Especially
how that goes.
A person that comes to play in Canada who came from the States. 100%.
Tougher for our Leafs to, get people to come up from the U.S. teams.
Well, there's a tax issue with that anyway, but this is a little bit different. So it is interesting. I agree with you for sure.
Yeah, and ongoing. So we'll continue to monitor that. Now, what are your thoughts on the transfer of the captaincy?
I think John Tavares was, is, and probably will always be a first-class individual.
Yes.
And he has maintained that same level from the moment he was 18 years old. Remember, he played Olympics, Team Canada, junior worlds,
and he was
he was first class across the board all the time.
Yeah.
So I think
he's been a premier player in the league for
and he's 33 years old and he's still performing. This is something that is tip your hat to him.
Yes.
For doing this.
It was a class move. It still has to be tough though for him.
Oh, absolutely. I'm not saying he offered it, but they told him and he agrees. Auston Matthews is a world-class player. He's the future of the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Yes.
He's ready to put the C on.
Yeah.
And John Tavares is more than... First of all, his 3 kids showed up, all wearing Auston Matthews shirts.
Was pretty cool.
And they wanted an autograph. And Tavares is looking at them, hello, this is Dad over here.
Yes.
And so you know what? Let's. I'm going to be at the season opener. I'll be standing up, congratulating him, passing the shirt.
Yeah.
So
I think he did it in a classy way. It doesn't happen very often in the NHL that the captaincy is passed on like that while the person is still playing on the team. So I think that was interesting. The one curveball I wanted to throw is, how much time do you think they spent debating between Matthews and Marner for who was going to be the captain?
Okay, you're not going to get me fueled here. Not going to happen. Okay.
Okay. All right.
I'm not falling for it.
We'll park that one.
You can park it.
There we go.
I'm not falling for that one.
Sounds good. All right. Our next topic is a me-cession. And personally, admittedly, I'd love to bug you about this one, Jerry, but I actually have never heard of this one until a recent economic report out of Alberta that I came across. A me-cession. So I think it's a relatively new term coined by an economist out in Alberta. And it's a fellow Charles, actually, that did coin it out in Alberta. But a me-cession focuses on the individual. So,
as it should.
Yeah, well, and so again, a new term. So a traditional recession would see GDP contracting and unemployment rising, would be a traditional recession. And we've been able to avoid that in Canada.
So we've avoided how? By not having two consecutive quarters of a negative GDP.
We haven't had, I mean, again, technically, we haven't had GDP contracting, and we haven't had unemployment sharply rising.
Why is that, CJ?
But let's get to what. So now we're in this, how did he come up with this me-cession term, and what is a me-cession? So now we know what a technical recession is. The me-cession aspect of it is, I'm going to read this because, again, it was new to me. So collectively, we're spending more and pushing economic activity higher, but individually, we're restricting purchases and behaving as if we are in a recession. So it's the idea that individually, we feel like we're in a recession. However, Canada is avoiding that recession, a me-cession.
When you say the word Canada, that includes all 40 million new citizens.
I think it's up to 44 now, but yeah.
Is it 44?
I will have to fact check that, but yeah.
I thought I heard they broke over 40. Okay.
Maybe it was in the next couple of years projected to get there.
So
fact checker will get on that.
But the point is, as a country, immigration, new Canadians, everyone's coming in buying stuff, and it's avoiding the technical definition of a recession because we don't get.
Yeah, that's the key.
We don't get two consecutive quarters of negative growth because 2 million new people need loaves of bread.
The population growth, which we have a chart here that just shows how dramatic that is, and you're looking at the population growth, visualizing Canada's demographic heat dome as the national population surges. And so you can see the sharp rise in that chart on the right-hand side of new Canadians. And I think that's what is the idea behind this me-cession, is that, again, collectively, Canada is spending more, but individually we're spending less. And so that's the idea behind this me-cession.
And can I give you my little blurb here regarding
credit cards? Let me see if I have anything else before we get
try to twist it on
before you get into
you twist it on the lots
before you get on your soapbox here.
No, there's no soapbox here because
we talk about it. We talk about this a lot, about how when you go out and you do see more people out, and so the idea of, aren't we supposed to be in a recession? How come all these people are out? So more people are still staying at home, but there's more people out. That visually it tricks you because there's just more people in the GTA hubs and in the major cities in Canada.
And let me explain to you what doesn't trick me. Is the fact that
can't pull this one over your eyes. Eh? Okay, all right.
Because the whole fact checking thing, right?
Yeah.
The total credit card debt recently just passed 1 trillion.
Yes.
So in order to
adjusted for inflation,
in order to understand 1 trillion, you got to get a pen out. You got to write it out so you can actually see it because it's ridiculous, right? It's a number. So then 55% of all Canadians have ongoing credit card balances.
Yeah.
So think about that. That includes the new people, the new 2 million, 4 million.
Sure. Yeah.
50% of those say it would take at least 6 months to pay off their balances. So when you think this through, and the guy says 6 months, is he not going to be shopping something else inside those 6 months? Probably. So he hopes his credit card balance will be paid in 6 months, but it's highly unlikely it will. And then The last fact check number was of May 2023. I know you're impressed by me saying fact check.
Well,
40. I had to do it because
still
of you.
using that in the wrong. We're supposed to. You fact checked yourself.
I fact
which
checked
I
myself.
respect that.
Thank you very much. $4,300 per Canadian is what the balances are in 2023. I suspect now, and I don't have proof of this one, it's closer to 5,000. Is my, because we were at, I think we were at 791 billion, and now it's $1 trillion. So if you do a prorated amount, probably every single Canadian, you may not have a balance, or I may not have one, but on average, it's close to $5,000 a person. That number is too big. Like, it's just too big. We all seem to be living not beyond our means, but we just say, yeah, you know what, I'll pay for it later. And it's getting harder, and it goes back to what you said about,
well, and I think that's
that's
the interesting thing about the whole me-cession idea, is that are people pulling back their spending and more living as if we are in a recession, or living within their means,
or being scared,
and scared of that.
Yeah.
And the reason that we're avoiding the technical recession is because the drastic amount of people that we've increased our population by over the last couple of years. It's to use your word, it's tricking us in the sense of we should normally be in a worse position. The Canadian economy should be in a worse position, but we're importing people as opposed to printing dollars and putting them into the system. It's kind of quantitative easing with people instead of dollars
with
into
money.
The system, right?
It is in my eyes, it's a bothersome thing, because you can sense people they're worried. They're worried about
Yes.
everyday expenditures, right? So,
And a lot of people are talking to us about, "Hey, my mortgage is up for renewal.
What do I do?
How can I plan and strategize to keep my amortization down and keep my payments, my cash flow okay?"
I didn't want to bring it to your attention that 2/3 of the people still haven't renewed their mortgage that got it back at the 1.7, the 2.
Yes,
They're
yeah.
coming up over the next 18 months. Even with the reduction of rates recently, I think pretty well you agree with me, every single person will have a higher amount
They'll
to
have
pay.
a higher payment, yes.
Hopefully it's coming
Yeah.
down. It won't be as high, but they're in for a little bit of shock too when it comes to that, right?
Yes.
So,
Yep. No, for sure. Yeah. And an adjustment to be
I
made there,
agree.
for sure. So our last topic is more of an open topic for us to chat about.
I love this topic, by the way.
I like this one because we do get this question a lot from clients, how am I doing compared to other people my age? And wealth is such a vast term and it means something different to everybody. So we wanted to talk about, a couple different ways that you can view wealth, and what does wealth mean to you. So
The definition, I think everyone knows, I have cash, I have stocks, I have a house, I have this. What do I owe on it? You take the difference, and
Yeah.
they would define it as my wealth or my net worth. They
Yeah.
would say, here's where I am.
Yeah.
And that's fine. That's one way to view things.
And I think, on that point is that the idea of wealth is more, I feel like, of an asset level, of a net worth or an asset level. And the idea of being rich is more of an income level. So when we're talking with clients, one of the major things we see with high income earners that might necessarily not be great savers is when you have money coming in, you feel and act rich because your income's high, right? And you might not necessarily be wealthy in terms of your assets or your savings or those types of things, but it's really easy to feel rich when you have a high income because the next paycheck, you always have that money coming in.
Well, if I use two extreme
Whenever
examples,
you pause like that, I made a good point.
No. Oh, no, you did make a good point. I'm not questioning your point. I'm saying, if I use two extreme examples and say a person makes $1 million, or no, let me start again. A person has $1 million saved, and a person has $200,000 saved. You immediately, in your mind, say, "Well, that guy's wealthy. He's wealthy. He's good. He has $1 million."
Yeah.
And the guy with 200,000 is not wealthy. Leads to my point here. Having more money than you need for now and the future. This should lead you to a life of, what do I have here? Contentment, happiness, and inner peace. It's not the $1 million you have in the bank. It's the amount that you have, and you know that you have enough for today and the future, because you're going to live within the parameters of what you have. That's why we have people, not we have, I'm sorry. That's why there's people there with $1 million saved oh, how am I going to live? How's the other guy saying he has 180? He says, oh, I'm in great shape.
Yes, yeah.
There's a difference. There's a disconnect here.
And you know, it'd be interesting to go back and ask those people 20 years prior, back to our inflation burger cost. If you would have told those people you're going to have $1 million when you're going to have $1 million when you're retired, they'd say, oh, that'd be great.
I'm done.
I'd be done. But that feeling of moving the goalposts forward and needing more.
Well, especially that you reach a number and you immediately say, oh, I need more than that. So you're never going to have a sense of
peace, like you said.
Inner peace. You're never, because you're always going to be
Mm-hmm.
stressed, anxiety. I'm not going to have enough. And yet you keep moving. Your comment of moving the goalposts is the perfect way. It's never a stationary position to say, when I get there, I'm going to live happily ever after.
Yes, yeah.
And I don't know who got us to that point. Maybe the media, maybe.
It's probably society as a whole, and just, you know, how it is, keeping up with the Joneses and all that stuff.
I really think your happiness and being content with what you have is the key. And if you make adjustments to what you have, you will live a good life.
And there's so many variables that go into it that it's really what you have to focus on is what's going to make you happy, you and your family or the people close to you. What's going to make you guys
as well,
happy?
not just for today, ongoing.
Because a few $1 million might be good here in Guelph, in Toronto, or in San Francisco. You might not be able to live off of that.
Or if you have a windfall of $2 million and you consume it in 5 years because you had a great 5 years, and then after the 5 years, all of a sudden you look around and there's money's not there. How do you feel? So again, my whole thing on wealth is making sure if I get a bill and I know I can pay for it, I'm a happy guy. I'm not looking to see if I have $1 million or $2 million. You know what I mean? Like there's just different ways of looking at it.
Yes,
and it is important. It really is. Like you have a great projection tool that we provide to clients all the time. You can change the numbers. You can tell them, like we always ask them, right? How much money do you need?
Yes, yeah.
You know, one person says $5,000 a month. One person says $8,000. So you're able to immediately through the program tell them, you know, you're gonna run out of money in 73.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not happy with that because the future is a lot quicker at 73 than it would be at 88.
Yeah.
So again, everyone has to look in the mirror here. And if you're dramatically behind, hey, cut back, start saving some money. Don't rack up credit card bills. Don't think the future's going to be fine.
Yeah.
We do need to do some savings.
Yes, yeah. And the point that I wanted to wrap up this one with was that the idea that what is wealth to you should have nothing to do with what is wealth to me or to what is wealth to your neighbor.
Absolutely.
Because once you start playing that game, you'll never be happy. And so what is wealth to you you need to figure that out.
I agree. It's not a comparison.
Yeah.
It's not I'm trying to match my next door neighbor because I don't do what they do. He doesn't do what I do. So I agree.
We had a few good feedback from our last episode. One of the comments on our video that was about the burn rate. So we were talking about the burn rate last time, and we were talking about what that burn rate should be, a sustainable number for you to withdraw out of your investments and live off of, to allow your money to last for a long time. So we had a range of comments on that specific segment. The one interesting one that I don't know if you actually saw this one, but there was one comment from a friend of mine and a client that said, "Burn zero, baby." I thought you might like that one. So that's certainly a good way to make sure that your money lasts. Burn zero, and
that guy's a smart guy.
Yes, yeah.
That means he's bringing money in continuously and not burning any of his money.
I thought that one was good.
You should tell me who it is. I'll quote him from now on. Burn zero.
There you go. Burn zero, baby.
So
was
instead
one
of
of
making fun of me when I said 4%, I'm even willing to go to 5%, for example. I just don't like when we get, like I said last time, 6s, 7s, and 8s.
Yeah, it's about finding that risk, but I thought that was a good
zero.
comment. Burn zero, baby.
I will forever.
So shout out to that client. I think you know who you are. So
well, he knows who he is.
Yes, yeah.
Burn zero.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So that's another episode wrapped up, and look forward to chatting with you next month.
Sounds good.